Welcome to Impossible Bodies.
Welcome everybody, welcome audience, and welcome Ali, Eslami and Mamali Shafahi, the producers of Nerd Funk and the happy winners of the, I hope you're happy with it, of the film, the Dutch Film Festival Prize, the Gouden Kalf for the best interactive. So we were proud with you of receiving this prize, of course. I'm giving you the floor to talk about the emerging reality of Instagram. Please, go ahead.
So, hey, my name is Ali Eslami, and I'm half of Nerdfunk. And yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to dive deep into the concept of Nerdfunk and how we ended up working on this project.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mamali Shafahi, visual artist and filmmaker. We have met with Ali in Tehran in spring 2018. And since then we are like working as a duo, partly in VR, partly in physical installation. And tonight we're gonna give you some more detail about the aspect of our project.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to share my screen. And let's go. Okay. So basically, we got together to form a research lab to explore the dichotomy and tensions in contemporary life between nature and ever faster technological change. At this stage in human development, people find themselves torn between back to nature, back to the spiritual impulse, and the seduction of disruptive new technologies and the transformation they're prepared to bring to our lives now and in the future. To investigate this phenomenon and allow others to investigate it with us, we decided to use VR. Instagram and the need to exist it projects has shifted the boundaries between public and private in a novel combination of narcissism and voyeurism. In its torrent of unrelated, intimate, useless information is creating a new aesthetic and culture. This VR project will zoom in on this phenomenon and capture it as a kaleidoscopic portrait of the present that can be explored and preserved as presenting this unique point in the history of our digital culture. Nerdfunk, a modular pluridisciplinary project centered on an immersive VR experience, dealing with 5 major contemporary themes. As members of the first post-internet social media generation, we share a fascination for how new digital tools and social media as an ephemeral phenomenon influence today's digital culture and visual expressions. Approaching Instagram as an archive in 2018, we began to capture the Instagram stories of over 800 people whose posts might be described as avant-garde, reflecting a distinctive new aesthetic. This archive of moving images, which continues to grow, forms the basis of Nerdfunk as a whole and feeds into the VR installation and experience, lecture performances, print publications, and so on. So to dive deeper into the phenomenons and the things that we sort of observed and bumped into during the workflow and the process we had since the past 2 years, basically dealing with this concept, is to list a few is these 4. So going from top to bottom, like this chaos of information that we sort of observed by dealing with this archive, and this is kind of the nature of any social media platform, especially Instagram, which is quite visual and information heavy, basically. and lots of unrelated stuff. Like just when you like start seeing Instagram stories and like swiping, you see like one person, like your friend partying, of course not anymore, and the other friend just sharing a music and so on. Someone like some political comments, and so it's like really a mess of information, and you just swipe in them in like seconds, like milliseconds, and this is really important how this is changing us and kind of as this new emergence of social media that we use daily and is kind of attached to our body is kind of, and our psyches is sort of intensely changing us as well. That's where we go to this idea of digital humanities, where it's kind of now it's a branch in the educational systems where they study how digital platforms like social media having a changing human behavior and the characteristics of humans from many different aspects like psychological and so on. So this is kind of being studied, and it's kind of interesting how we as individuals see ourselves also. Our behaviors have changed using Instagram, for instance, that you figure out, wow, I've never been so much imposed to this amount of information. And this is actually beyond the capacity of our minds and our cognitive capacity to sort of perceive them. So that forms the basis of what we sort of, on the surface, we observed on this project. And to talk more about the process of how we deal with this archive is, so we first started with preserving those. So by preserving these kind of Instagram stories over the past 2 years of these specific accounts that we sort of knew from our own circle of friends or online friends that we were following and we found interesting. So we first preserved them. There's like, video recordings in a big archive. And by preserving them actively, we start to after that we start to explore this archive to see the trends, to see similarities, and what's happening in this archive, and then it becomes to investigate how can we deal with this mess of information, which comes into the idea of curating the archive. So as a process, we start to sort of categorize the contents based on more like a human-friendly kind of approach to these chaotic informations. So it's all by hand. There's no AI involved. There's no like machine learning involved in this process. We just we just watch the contents one by one, or like thumbnails or whatever, and then try to categorize them. And for us, this is very important. This human approach to the archive is important because we want to approach it from through our own constraints in our bodies and our minds. We don't want to use things that we are not familiar with. So we want to use all the tools at our hands to stay truthful to what we observe and what we can get out of it. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how this chaos of information brings this tension within us as makers to bring a new value by curating and making new hyperrealities based on those archives, and sort of trying to bring it somewhere that we as humans can relate more and trigger more of our imagination, and at the same time preserving this unique point of digital culture that's changing every day. And this rapid growth of the Instagram, it's insane. They put new features like the AR masks. It didn't exist around 2 years ago. Now it's
when we started.
yeah, when we started it, there was no like face masks, and when it came out, it changed the whole language of how people react and share their own sort of stories through Instagram.
Yeah, actually we choose Instagram as a platform, as a social media platform, because we find it quite important, interesting in terms of how it's pushing the boundaries between private and public, and how the philosophy of liking and get attention by liking the photos of each other, the users are kind of forgetting their taboos, and they are kind of growing their own social limits. And it's also like kind of the idea of this philosophy of narcissism and voyeurism, like how in a platform how we can became a like a completely voyeurism and just observing each other, and like not just, you know, it's kind of interesting in terms of psychology to find ourselves how we react about the content or on our content and the others content. And like you can easily with by using Instagram, you can kind of score yourself like how much you are like a observer person, or you want to have be more like an active person in I mean in this small echelon of society. And of course, like we are also questioning the new form of human expressions and communication, because we are kind of dealing with this new phenomena of like Instagram influencer, like the kind of unknown collective identity, like us, like the way we observe social media with Nerdfunk is quite interesting, because there is no personal identity on behind. Then you can really go much more far, and like as a like a not be known in I mean it's really create a new form of communication, because you're unknown and you can be like there is no all this like family and society structure on the back. And for us it's completely kind of an Instagram is like a niche of like kind of analyzing how these new forms are growing and how they gonna be affected in our society in the future.
So we can talk a little bit more about what happens actually in Netfunk. So what happens in the journey, in the user journey in the virtual reality experience. So as we know that Nerdfunk is going to be five VR chapters with an art installation space. So in the phase one of Nerdfunk, we made the first 2 chapters of the experience. And now we can dive into each chapter and talk a little more in depth about what happens in each chapter and what is the concept behind each of them. So the first chapter is about post-body and the representation of human body on Instagram, how we humans see ourselves through the lens of Instagram. And this was one of the main sort of themes we observed on the archive. There are many sort of selfies and self-recordings, people representing their own body through different filters or augmenting their bodies and like their shapes. They're not always the way they look in the camera. They always sort of try to push it with some like, you know, stickers, AR masks. And this is for us very interesting to observe that how we actively represent ourselves through these digital platforms with these virtual augmentations, that can also mean that how we see ourselves and our own bodies are also sort of evolving and changing. So the body that we see is not necessarily the flesh and what we know here. It's just, it can be anything imagined through the lens of digital sort of extensions that's getting applied to it. So in the experience, in the VR experience, as you start, first of all, you will have a kind of a surreal hand that is melted into a phone. So you're holding a phone at your hand, and your hand is kind of melted to the phone. And you go into this sort of with this sort of inner body tunnel where you see different body parts, kind of surreal, and in each of these sort of elements, as you pass through them and you sort of fly through them, you see projections of the Instagram contents that sort of blends with this hyperreal visual world. It's kind of like dreaming in social media in a sense. It feels like seeing a dream, basically. And I can actually show one video excerpt of the tunnel that you go into the VR. What we found super interesting though, having this sort of phone at your hand in VR is kind of phenomenal experience. Then you get distracted by the phone at your hand. That sort of feels so real. Weird to have this tension again in VR, which is one of the few elements that are really real, and like our bodies respond to it. Kind of, it's kind of the DNA right now that like if your phone sort of buzzes in your pocket or on your hand, you immediately sort of want to respond to it, and it's kind of wired to our brains. And this again happens in VR, which makes you kind of question also this sort of body reactions of how entangled we are with all these smartphones that we hold in our hands. So the second chapter, Mamali can go through.
Yeah, the second chapter, we name it Techno Party because, as you know, every kind of like weekend and almost every night you have people posting the stories and videos from like different festivals, parties, etc. And it's kind of like this, we find it quite interesting, this techno culture we are kind of living in, and like is kind of, I mean, all our generation are quite familiar, and we wanted to create a whole like virtual kind of a vertical club. And the idea of this space was how to overwhelm the audience with the beauty and power of technology's impact, like how the sound and lighting can bring us somewhere really far, and then our sense can be really get touched by this synchronization of light and sounds. And this chapter, as the other chapters, we have this idea of like starting from quite pleasant and kind of like relaxing ambient, and arriving to the very kind of harsh and violent kind of strong impact of what we are feeling in VR. And at the end of the chapters, you feel kind of dizzy because it's so many movement and so many like physical vibration. Because also for this chapter in our installation, you are wearing a sub pack, which is the tool you can feel the beat of the music on your back. It's kind of vibrating your body. And I think in this chapter, as the other chapters, for us is important to show how like this love and hate relationship we have with technology and social media and techno culture, etc. How we can deal with it, and how we can kind of find, I mean, to showing the both sides, how we can find our digital well-being inside of this phenomenon.
So I'm gonna play a video excerpt of the club. I hope it's not too loud. It's techno. Yeah, maybe I can explain about the body that you have in VR, because that might not be much intuitive enough in the videos. So basically, our ideas was to expand this body that we had in the first chapter, which was basically one phone and which is attached to your hand. But in the second chapter, in the techno party, we wanted people to be able to evolve to a new form of body that allows them to dance in this virtual club. So we made this kind of post-human body where you had this kind of first of all, we attached 3 of those hand and phones on your waist, so it's always attached to you as you move look around, and you have these sort of huge extended hands that as you move your hands, you can basically dance with them, or and also on top of your head there is a device that shoots emojis, like 3D emojis in the space, and with your hand you can also sort of play with them. But yeah, as Mamali said, this experience is like quite it's fun, but at the end it gets to the very extreme where it sort of becomes kind of like an overdose of this whole club experience, where everything becomes like really intense and pushes to the maximum threshold. And this whole and we had like a very interesting challenge to also design this club, which is an infinite virtual club that goes forever to the sky, and all these screens like pumping into your face, all synced with the music. So yeah, this was it's such an intense experience, but at the same time quite fun. I mean, we have fun watching, like experiencing again, just like it's like going to a club, but yeah,
it's a nice chapter for COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
We can get excited as it's
so we had this first two chapters that we made in the phase 1 of Nerdfunk. So last year in 2019 we produced the chapter 1 and 2, and 2018 was mostly about research and concepts and investigations and archive, the whole process and what we could do with the archive. So now this year and the year after, we are planning to push Netfunk to the next phase, which is phase 2, which we're gonna make 3 other chapters to sort of create like a more sort of diverse themes of the archive that we deal with. So in chapter 3, I'll just quickly go through what they're going to be like because they're not yet made, so we cannot show much about the visuals. But the concept, the third chapter would be about nature and landscape. So it would be around the concepts of like ecology and how we see nature and what is nature right now as we speak right now, because most of us our landscapes right now is mostly concrete and urban, and so we sort of want to see it through this lens as well, and yeah, based on the collection of the we get from the archive, I think it's going to be an interesting also and very timely, I guess, for us to tap into in this chapter. And chapter 4 is about cyber identities, which is quite one of the phenomena that Instagram itself was sort of founded, this kind of idea of influencers and the people who make a persona of themselves on Instagram. And it's kind of, yeah, like kind of fictional sort of personas that they create. And for us, it's very interesting how they show themselves on Instagram, like from fashion influencers to artists or performance, or it goes to a very wide range of society, how influencers are like now acting on Instagram. So in this chapter, we want to make this kind of level where you can see the avatars of each of these influencers. So we would pick some influencers that we could work with, and in the experience, you can choose and zoom into one of these influencers and go into their inner lives and see the kaleidoscope of their inner life and their inner kind of space, basically. How and it's also for us interesting how this contrast between their real self and their persona self and cyber self is. So we try to sort of portray that in this episode. And lastly, the chapter 5 is about augmented city and all the layers of information that we are dealing with. Is kind of more like semiotic and about layers of information that we sort of impose to our contents. For instance, now on Instagram, I barely see people only posting a photo or a video, like bare photo. There's always something added to it, like a GIF or sticker or like a text or like emojis. And this is already augmented realities. Like we are thinking through the augmentation of information, like layers of information. So in this chapter, we want to sort of push it to a kind of an imagined future of a city, like a cyberpunk city, where all these contents that we grab through the archive of Nerdfunk, we will decompose them from their layers that they made out of, and we will spread those layers around in the city. And this is going to be also, I guess, another intense experience where when you face the layers of information, you just with some touches on your screen, you compose them and put them on Instagram. This sounds pretty straightforward, but when this thing pushes to the extreme threshold of being projected to your city and to your eyeballs, that's going to be an interesting sort of way to portray how we are already augmenting our own lives through these sort of information. So yeah, about the post experience, Mamali can break down.
Yeah, post experience, as we already said, for us, it's not only a VR project. We are really interested to the how we can create a bridge between virtual and physical, and then physical installation has almost like 50% of like what's happening in VR, and it's kind of after and before experience. And what I would explain about the installation, we are actually we are working with architects, and the people are studying ergonomy in VR to put our audience in different position. Like we're gonna have like about a big space for the 5 chapter, and then you're gonna deal with different element of whole 5 chapter in the physical space in the hybrid way of like kind of, yeah, the same way we deal with this element in VR, we can also kind of bring them in reality. And yeah, and then I mean, you can kind of just by going around in the installation, you can get also already like a kind of before experience of diving in VR. And then we have, but of course, Nerdfang on Instagram, which we try to kind of upgrade it each time. And one of the idea of the Instagram is to take over our Instagram by the other influencer, and the people are kind of like have the same vision on Instagram. And we, by in that way, we want to also like develop the diversity of the imagery we are creating or creating through other users. And we're gonna have a lecture performance and the publication of all this documentation, which we find it quite important to kind of explore all these ideas, and then like the process of the work we did, and also like have invited like other academic people to write essays, and try to like develop as much as possible the whole concept.
Yeah, I think that's it about the slides. So we try to keep it as short as possible. So I think, yeah, from now on we can have discussions that's like based on intuitions, if you have any questions or... Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, now you can.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Ali and Mamali. That was really insightful, and also for me, because you have, of course, been developing more into the chapters 3, 4, and 5. I have one question for myself, and there are some questions from the audience coming up as well. My first question would be, so actually we had envisioned to have a real-life virtual reality installation in the physical exhibition of Impossible Bodies, which was like, you know, like had to be cancelled 1.5 weeks before we were starting because of the second lockdown of the COVID-19, which is of course a terrible thing. And actually for us, all of us, you and me, it was quite a physical experience, as I had a very large installation, a prop in my kitchen to be to be transported to Zetogenbos. So you know, so we met the big hand, the big prop, like every day in the morning. So that was really a shame, but now it kind of, it's for me very easy now to move to that question, like, it was for you a very, very important thing to really install the VR installation and only have, a teaser on the experience. And I have experienced the VR myself, so I do have some answers, but I would like to hear from you, like, why is it now so? And also, because it's not only to have it physical, but also the control that you seem to have on the virtual reality that is difficult to kind of share online, where people, of course, also have VR, Oculus classes, etc. So please tell.
Yeah, I think, as you said, like for us, it's very important, the physical aspect of the project. And this might bring some, like, I mean, this is kind of like a stereotype around VR, and which people think is like a digital kind of work. So it's supposed to be viewed digitally. It doesn't matter if it's like online or offline. But we're not there yet with the state of technology that like I could share like the experience file on the internet, and you click one button and you have already a glass at your home, and you press it and you go into Nerdfunk. It's not at all yet there, like in terms of accessibility of technology. And apart from that, being in the exhibition, like in the situation that we create in the physical space, the vibe and how you introduce yourself to the experience is important. And as I said, like VR is quite like an embodied, is one of the most like bodily subset of technology. It's kind of channels your senses, your body's senses, and it has to be felt. And if there's a compromise in between, it really doesn't do what it has to offer. Because for me as a VR artist, I always have this in my mind: why do we do this? Like in VR, I mean, we already have these very established kind of mediums, and so many times there are some projects that don't have to be in VR, but they get translated into VR because of the hype, or at the end it becomes like a gimmick. But we didn't want, I mean, our basis of the experience is based on videos, and this is like also, I mean, this is kind of going a bit off topic, but it's good to mention that Mamali is a video artist, and he deals with video. And first time we met to talk about Nerdfunk, we discussed how important it is to not do this in the video format as it is. Because if we want to push this idea to the extreme of this whole social media and whatever we just talked right now about, we want to push it further, to see through it from a different lens. And VR is a great fit for our concept, because we are talking about how technology is impacting our bodies and how our bodies is shaping technology, and it's also fitting our concept. And that's something we didn't want to compromise. And that was quite a unfortunate thing, but it's 2020. What can we say?
No, but I mean, it's really great to hear this answer, because actually, so I have experienced your installation twice, and the last time at the film festival. And I was, like physically really confused because of this phone in my hands, So it really works like that. So I can really kind of on the confirm that experience, that it's so bodily full experience. It's absolutely there. So. But it is interesting to hear you say that. I have a few more questions. So from the audience, Sarah asks, I consider Instagram as a simulation of the real human world because everyone exists there in another shape. So why categorize it?
You want to go?
I mean, first of all, I mean, for me, it's actually something completely, I'm actually exactly the opposite, because I think we all need to, it's not about the idea of categorizing, it's more about the idea of respecting each vision and each aesthetics and each age and each, I think it's just, I don't know why the Instagram of, like, for example, my mom, who is like 64, should be the same as mine. I mean, it's like I'm talking about the surface of the application. I think actually the idea, if I put the word of categorizing more than like creating content for each person and like help each individual to getting what it needs to get from social media, I think is very important. And one of the idea of like our project, actually Nerdfang, by sorting out this, I mean, yeah, again, I would say more than categorizing is sorting out the content. By sorting out this content, we are giving this idea to the user, like it became much more interesting and ready to digest, because it's just honestly like dealing with 100 of different content and like from food to sexual image to, I don't know, like techno parties to, it's just give you a dizzy and like a vertigo, and you don't get much more than just like sliding the image. And we think like it should be much more yeah, I mean, it's gonna be I mean, we believe the future of social media want to be much more creative.
Thank you. Mary asks whether the archive is still growing. I suppose she doesn't only mean the archive of the chapters coming up, but also the archive of the first chapters, I think.
Well, they don't necessarily portray in the chapters that we finished, but for us it's actually kind of interesting that we are doing it over time. So the post body chapter that we made was based on the state of archive by around early 2019. That was the time where the AR masks was sort of just getting introduced, not widely used, and I think that this idea of preservation as well becomes more tangible when you look at the work, let's say 10 years from now, and then you look and see, okay, this was how some people, let's say, were posting stuff in that era and in that time zone. And for us, this is important to sort of pinpoint this progress, because the final chapter that we make would be more like up to dated with the archive and more in sync. But then after a year, after 2 years, with this rapid growth of digital culture, it already becomes an old school kind of legacy content, where you say, oh, like memes as well. That's a good analogy for that. Memes are just like they make sense in a very month. Like if you use a meme from 3 months ago, you already get like bullied. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it's for us, this is important, how fast this rapid growth is and how we can pinpoint them through over time.
And also is the way of archiving, we are also, for us, is kind of new, because even like we were talking or in a lecture about digital humanities, which is the branch in academic and universities, and it's explaining like the archive is not anymore the printed words, is not only the books, or is not just the academic thesis, etc. It's like the social media platform like Instagram, Twitter, etc., became very important. But for us, it was just an essay to show like how we can just preserve and fix the image of, let's say, 2020 for the as a first generation dealing with social media and all this technological aspect. And then we find it quite interesting and even funny for the because we think we are in the acceleration um, time of, we are living in the period we think is everything is goes fastly, but we are kind of sure in 10 years it's going to be completely retro and kind of vintage what we are dealing with. And then we find it quite funny to keep it as an example of what's or feeling about our time. And of course it can keep going.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you mention this now, I had an association with work of an artist. We worked together for Hacking Habitat, a show that we did a few years ago, Melanie Bonayo. And she was making then the work, an assignment called Regress or Progress or Regress. And what she did, she interviewed older people and younger people about the influence of technology on their lives. Now, the older people could all remember because, like, even the invention of the morning after pill or whatever kind of technology, because it didn't went that rapidly yet at that time. And now I see you guys talking about this, and I think that is also something might be a motivation that you somehow, in this archiving, or kind of want to pinpoint, to memorize, because it's not possible.
Yeah.
So the young people that she also questioned, they had no idea, no clue, because it goes so fast. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can grasp it. So is that also a motivation for you to actually do this?
Exactly, and we are very happy to have this documentation from the user themselves. I think one of the really important points of our project Nerdfunk is like we are not documenting our period by ourselves. Like we are not filming something or making like documentation of this. It's just using this completely random archive of these other users, which is making the is showing a mirror of a society by using them in our project.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of a quote that was with in an interview with J.G. Ballard, and was one writer asked him what's your sort of advice to us science fiction writers to get inspired to make new fictions? And he said a really interesting thing. He said, you don't need to look for fiction. The fiction is already there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very beautiful way to end this session because I absolutely agree that that's also science fiction. Many people think that's only something about the future, but actually it talks about the here and now, of course. So really, thank you so much for this talk and taking us into all the concepts and thinking and thoughts of Nerdfunk, and we're really looking forward to see the next chapter soon. I'll wrap this up now, but also for the audience, I wanted to tell that for everybody, and of course also you, Ali and Mamali, to have an after party with us in the cantina. Don't know whether you already visited the cantina. It's really, really fun. Yeah. So we can see each other and network and have a drink. It's a Second Life environment. It's like, it's kind of a game. And tomorrow we will be live again with a new program. It will be announced. It's already announced on our website and on the social media. So thank you a lot.
Sure.
And see you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.